A roar echoed across the Pride Lands, but it was not loud with power. It trembled with fear. And that was the moment Kion realized something terrifying. The prince chosen to protect the kingdom was afraid of becoming the very thing he was meant to fight. The wind carried whispers of doubt, shadows stretched across the grasslands, and every heartbeat felt like a warning that destiny was not a gift. It was a test. Kion stood on Pride Rock, staring at the horizon where stories of heroes lived, wondering if he would ever deserve to stand beside names like Simba and Mufasa. And in that moment, he knew something inside him was still small, still scared, still unsure if courage could ever defeat fear. The night he received the roar, thunder cracked across the sky, and the earth shook beneath his paws. Every animal cheered, believing a new protector had risen. But Kion's heart whispered a different truth. Power without control could destroy everything he loved. He remembered the stories of Scar, how fear ruled the kingdom before, how darkness can grow when a king loses his heart. And Kion asked himself a question no one heard. What if I failed to? Days passed, and the lion guard trained under the blazing sun. Bunga laughed fearlessly. Fuli ran like lightning. Besht stood strong like mountains, and Ono watched the sky with wisdom. They believed in him completely. That belief felt heavier than any crown. One afternoon, a herd panicked near a broken gorge, and Kion froze. The roar waited inside him, but fear chained it. He imagined hurting the innocent, imagined losing control, imagined becoming a monster. Then Bunga shouted, "We trust you!" And in that instant, Kion realized courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward while fear screams in your ear. He roared, gentle but strong, guiding the herd to safety. That night, Simba spoke softly. Every king is afraid before he becomes brave. Kion looked up, realizing heroes were not fearless legends. They were warriors who faced fear again and again. But destiny was not finished. Hyenas attacked, storms raged, droughts came, and enemies whispered lies to weaken the Pride Lands. Each challenge tested Kion's heart. Sometimes he failed. Sometimes he doubted. Sometimes he wanted to run. Yet every time he fell, his friends lifted him. Every mistake became a lesson. Every scar became a reminder that strength grows through struggle. One dark evening, alone under cold stars, Kion admitted his greatest fear. What if I am not strong enough to be king? Rafiki appeared quietly and smiled, saying, "The crown does not make a king, the journey does." From that night, Kion changed. He listened more, roared less. He learned patience, kindness, and wisdom. When enemies attacked again, he did not fight with anger. He fought with purpose. The Lion Guard moved as one, protecting the circle of life. Animals who once doubted now believed. And when the sun rose over a peaceful Pride Lands, Kion realized something powerful. Fear had not disappeared. It never would. But it no longer ruled him. Because every step, every lesson, every friend had turned fear into courage. From fear to crown, the journey was not about winning battles. It was about becoming worthy of the love he was sworn to protect. And as the wind carried his calm, confident roar across the savannah, the Pride Lands knew a true king was rising. Not one born without fear, but one who had learned to conquer it with heart. Tonight, the sky burned red and the stars disappeared. Kion understood something terrifying. Fear was no longer just inside his heart. It had come alive in the Pride Lands, creeping through whispers, doubts, and broken trust. And if he failed now, every animal who believed in him would lose hope forever. The wind howled like a warning. Dust covered the grasslands. Kion stood frozen at the edge of Pride Rock, wondering if destiny had chosen the wrong lion. Because courage felt far away, and fear felt closer than ever. He remembered the roar that once saved a herd, the lessons of his father Simba, and the silent strength of his grandfather Mufasa. But tonight, Those memories felt like distant echoes. Storm clouds rolled in. News arrived that enemies were spreading lies in the outlands, telling animals that the Lion Guard was weak, that Kion was afraid, that the kingdom would fall. For the first time, Kion wanted to hide. He imagined running away from the roar, from the crown, from every expectation. But when he looked behind him, he saw his friends standing strong. Bunga grinned without fear. Fuli stood ready like lightning, waiting to strike. Besht planted his feet like a mountain that would never move, and Ono watched the sky with calm wisdom. They were not afraid because they trusted him. That trust burned brighter than fear. The Lion Guard rode into the storm, facing enemies who used lies instead of claws. Animals shouted in anger, blaming Kion for problems he never caused. Doubt spread like wildfire. For a moment, Koyan felt his courage crack. He realized fear was not always roaring monsters. Sometimes it was quiet voices saying, "You are not good enough." Then Ono whispered, "Truth is stronger than fear." Kion stepped forward, not with a roar, but with honesty. He spoke to the herds, admitted his mistakes, promised protection, and asked for unity. Slowly, the shouting stopped. Fear lost its power when truth stood tall. But darkness was not done. A wildfire erupted near the waterhole, flames racing toward sleeping animals. Panic exploded across the plains. Kion's heart pounded, remembering every fear of losing control. If he roared too strong, he could hurt them. If he waited too long, they would burn. He closed his eyes and remembered something Rafiki once said. "Courage is not loud, it is steady," Kion roared. Not with rage, not with panic, with purpose. The roar pushed flames away, cleared smoke, and saved lives. When the fire died, silence filled the air. Then cheers rose like thunder. Animals realized something important. Their protector was not fearless. But he was brave enough to act when it mattered. That night, Simba walked beside him and said softly, "You are learning what it means to be king." Kion looked across the peaceful Pride Lands and understood the truth. The crown was not waiting at the end of a path. It was being shaped with every choice, every sacrifice, every act of courage. Fear had not vanished. It still whispered. Benel courage answered louder. The next morning, Kion led the Lion Guard into the rising sun. They were not chasing glory. They were protecting hope. Every step felt lighter, every roar felt clearer, every friend felt stronger. And when Kion stood on Pride Rock again, wind lifting his mane, he did not feel like a cub pretending to be brave. Feel like a leader who had walked through fear and come out wiser. The Pride Lands looked peaceful, safe, united. From fear to crown, the journey was still continuing, but something inside him had changed forever. He no longer feared becoming king, because he understood a true king is not perfect, not fearless, not unstoppable. A true king is someone who stands up even when shaking, protects even when unsure, and loves even when afraid. As the sun climbed higher and animals gathered below, Kion let out a calm, confident roar that echoed across the savannah. Not as a cry of power, but as a promise. Fear may rise again. Darkness may return. Challenges will come. But he will never stop fighting for the light, never stop protecting his friends, never stop growing into the king he was meant to be. And the Pride Lands answered with cheers, because they knew something beautiful. The crown was already shining in his heart. The morning the sun refused to rise on time, the Pride Lands felt the weight of something unseen, and Kion sensed it before anyone spoke a word. Because fear was changing shape again, no longer loud storms or roaring enemies, but quiet doubt creeping into hearts, turning friends against each other. And the young prince realized the hardest battle was not against claws, it was against hopelessness. The sky stayed gray. Animals whispered. and rumors spread that the circle of life itself was breaking. Kion stood at the edge of Pride Rock, asking himself if courage could survive when hope disappeared. He remembered the stories of Simba leading after exile, of Mufasa guiding even in spirit, and he wondered if he could ever be worthy of their legacy. The wind carried voices of doubt from distant lands, more. And for a moment, he felt small again, like the cub who feared his own roar. But the lion guard refused to let fear win. Bunga joked even when danger crept close, reminding everyone laughter is a shield against despair. Fuli raced across the plains, delivering messages of unity faster than rumors could spread lies. Besht comforted frightened herds, his calm presence proving strength can be gentle. And Ono watched the skies for truth, guiding Kion with wisdom when emotions blurred judgment. Together they discovered the truth behind the darkness. A group of bitter outsiders were whispering fear into every corner, convincing animals that sharing water was weakness, that helping neighbors meant losing power, that survival meant selfishness. It was not a battle of claws, it was a war of hearts. Kion felt anger rise, a dangerous fire that tempted him to roar in rage, to silence every enemy forever. But then he remembered the lesson of his journey. Power without control destroys everything. He took a breath and chose patience. Instead of fighting lies with anger, he fought them with truth. He walked to the waterhole where animals argued and said calmly, "The circle of life is not about who wins, it is about who cares." At first, no one listened. Zebras turned away. Antelope shouted. Even birds doubted. Kion's voice trembled, fear returning like a shadow. Then Besh stepped beside him. Then Fuli. Then Ono. Then Bunga. The Lion Guard stood united, silent proof that teamwork was stronger than fear. One by one, animals stopped shouting. They saw courage, not in roaring power, but in patient kindness. A thirsty elephant calf approached, unsure, and Kion guided her gently to water. That small act broke the wall of doubt. Others followed. Sharon returned. Hope returned, and Kion understood something powerful. Fear loses when someone chooses compassion first. But destiny tested him again. That night, a massive storm tore through the Pride Lands. Lightning striking trees, rivers flooding dens, cubs crying in panic. Kion raced through chaos, helping wherever he could, forgetting exhaustion, forgetting doubt. When he saw a trapped herd surrounded by rising water, fear screamed inside him again. If his roar went wrong, waves could drown them. If he hesitated, they would perish. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "Courage is love in action." He roared with precision, splitting rocks to create a safe path. Water flowed away, animals escaped, and the storm slowly passed. When dawn finally came, the sun rose brighter than ever, shining on a kingdom saved not by one lion, but by unity. Simba looked at his son with pride and said, "You are learning the hardest lesson of all. A king's greatest strength is not power, it is hope." Kion stared across the glowing savannah and felt something new growing inside him. Fear still existed, but it no longer controlled his choices. He had faced doubt, lies, storms, and anger, and each time he chose courage, guided by friendship. From fear to crown, the journey was teaching him that true kings are not born in comfort, they are shaped in storms, strengthened by loyalty, and defined by the love they protect. And as animals gathered peacefully under the rising sun, Kion's calm roar echoed across the Pride Lands, not as a warning, but as a promise that no matter how dark the night becomes, hope will always rise with the dawn. The day, the river ran dry, and the earth cracked beneath trembling paws. Kion felt a silence heavier than any roar, because hunger and fear were spreading faster than fire. And every eye in the Pride Lands turned toward him, asking one question without words: "Can you save us now?" The sky was empty. The wind carried dust instead of rain, and for the first time since his journey began, Kion realized courage was not only about fighting enemies, it was about protecting hope when nothing looked possible. He looked at his friends and saw worry even in their brave faces. Bunga tried to laugh, but his voice shook. Fully paced restlessly like lightning trapped in a cage. Besh stared at the dry river with silent sadness. And Ono searched the skies but found no clouds. The Pridelands were suffering, and Kion felt the weight of every hungry cub, every tired elder, every frightened herd. That night he spoke with his father, Simba, who said softly, "A king's strength is not measured when times are easy." Kion nodded, but fear still whispered, "What if I cannot save them?" Morning came with desperate news. Water remained only in distant lands beyond dangerous cliffs, guarded by creatures who trusted no one. Many lions wanted to take it by force. Anger rose, and the kingdom stood on the edge of war. Kion felt torn between power and mercy. He remembered the stories of Mufasa, who ruled with wisdom, not pride. Instead of lending an attack, Kion chose to travel with the Lion Guard to ask for help. It was a risky path. Some animals called him weak, some doubted his leadership. Every insult struck like a thorn, but he kept walking. When they reached the cliffs, the Guardians refused them. "Water is ours," they said. Bunga growled, fully tensed. The moment could have turned into battle. Kion's heart pounded with fear and anger, but he remembered his journey. Power without mercy crumples kingdoms. He bowed his head and said, "We do not ask for victory. We asked for life." Silence followed. Then, a small cub from the other side stepped forward, thirsty and scared. Kion shared the last drop of his own water. That simple act changed everything. The Guardian saw truth in his heart. Gates opened. Water flowed. When the Lion Guard returned, rain clouds gathered as if the sky itself answered courage with mercy. The river filled again. Grass turned green. Animals cheered. But Kion knew the real victory was not water. It was unity. That night, Rafiki smiled and said, "You are learning to lead with heart." Kion stood on Pride Rock, watching the moonlight dance on the river, and realized something powerful. Fear had not disappeared. Hunger, storms, and enemies would come again. But courage had grown stronger than fear. Because he had learned to trust his friends, his values, and the circle of life. From fear to crown. The journey was shaping him into a king who understood sacrifice, patience, and love. Not a ruler who commands with pride, but a leader who protects with compassion. And when he roared softly into the night, the sound carried peace across the savannah. A promise that even in the darkest drought, hope would never run dry while hearts stood united. If you want, I can continue with part 5 with an even bigger war. Emotional sacrifice, and the final step before Kion reaches his crown. The night the mountains answered with a roar that was not Kion's. The stars themselves seemed to shake, and every creature in the Pridelands woke with the same terrifying thought. A new king was rising, and he wanted the crown before Kion was ready to wear it. The wind carried rumors of a brutal army marching through hidden valleys, burning grass, scaring herds, whispering lies that the Lion Guard had failed. Kion stood on Pride Rock, heart pounding, realizing destiny would not wait anymore. He looked toward his father Simba, remembering how courage once saved the kingdom from darkness. And he remembered stories of Mufasa, who taught that a true king protects even when hope seems lost. Kion wanted to be brave like them, but fear still whispered inside. What if I lose everything tonight? The Lion Guard gathered under the pale moon. Bunga tried to joke, but his eyes showed worry. Fuli watched the hills with sharp focus. Besh stood steady like a wall, and Ono circled above, searching for truth in the dark. They were ready, but Kion knew strength alone would not win this war. Scouts brought news of the enemy king, cruel and cunning. promising power to anyone who betrayed the Pride Lands. Some frightened animals believed him. Some turned against their own friends. Fear was spreading faster than fire. Kion realized something painful. The greatest battles are not fought with claws, they are fought in hearts. He wanted to roar and chase the enemy away. He remembered his journey from fear to courage. Instead, he walked among the herds, speaking softly, reminding them of unity, of trust, of the circle of life. Slowly, hope returned. Old friends forgave each other. Rivals stood side by side. The Pride Lands began to believe again. When dawn came, the enemy army attacked. Dust rose like a storm. The ground shook. The Lion Guard ran into battle. Bunga defended the cubs with fearless heart. Fully struck like lightning to protect the weak. Besht blocked enemies from reaching the river. Ono guided them from the sky. And Kion stood in the center, feeling fear clawing his chest, begging him to run. He closed his eyes and remembered every lesson, every mistake, every scar. Courage is not louder than fear, it is stronger than fear. He roared, not with anger, but with purpose. The sound carried truth across the battlefield. Animals who doubted felt hope rise. Enemies hesitated. The rival king attacked Kion directly, strong, fast, merciless. For a moment, Kion fell. The world blurred. Fear screamed, "You are not ready." But he heard his friends shouting, "We trust you." He stood again, not because he was fearless, but because he refused to abandon them. Together, the Lion Guard surrounded the enemy, not to destroy, but to stop him. Kion spoke calmly, offering peace. The rival king laughed, blinded by pride, and charged again. This time, his own army stepped back, realizing they were fighting for lives. Unity broke his power. His roar faded into silence. When the battle ended, the sun rose gently over the savannah. The Pride Lands were safe. Animals gathered around Kion, not cheering a warrior, but honoring a leader who chose mercy over revenge. Simba nodded proudly. Rafiki smiled. The Lion Guard laughed with relief. Kion looked across the kingdom and felt something new inside him. Not fear, not doubt, but quiet confidence. Slow, he understood that becoming a king was not about defeating enemies. It was about protecting hearts, guiding hope, and standing firm when fear tries to rule. From fear to crown, his journey was nearly complete. The final test was not a battle, not a roar, but a choice to lead with wisdom every single day. And as the wind carried his calm roar into the glowing sunrise, the Pride Lands knew their future king was ready, not because he had no fear, but because he had learned to rise every time fear tried to break him. If you want, I can now write part 6 with the final coronation. Emotional ending and powerful moral message for maximum watch time. The storm ended, but the silence that followed was louder than any roar Kion had ever heard. Because tonight was the night he would either become a true king or remain a lion hiding behind fear forever. The Pride Lands were calm, the sky glowing with thousands of stars. Yet inside, his heart thunder still rumbled, whispering that crowns are heavy, that leaders fall, that legends are impossible to live up to. Kion stood alone at the edge of Pride Rock, looking at the land he loved, remembering every mistake, every loss, every scar that shaped him. He remembered the days he doubted himself, the nights he wanted to run, the moments he thought he was not strong enough. But he also remembered the friends who stayed, the lives he saved, the promises he kept. Fear had followed him from cubhood, but courage had followed too, quiet and patient. Behind him stepped his father, Simba, calm and proud, not saying a word at first, only standing beside his son, letting the silence speak. Kion finally whispered, "What if I fail?" Simba smiled gently and said, "Every king fails. The ones who rise again become legends." The Lion Guard gathered one last time before the ceremony. Bunga hugged Kion with fearless joy. Fully nudged him with quiet trust. Besht promised he would always stand strong, and Ono circled above, watching the sunrise of a new era. They were no longer just a team. They were a family forged in battles, tears, and victories. As dawn painted the sky gold, the animals of the Pride Lands gathered below. Gazelles, elephants, zebras, birds, even old rivals who once fought now stood together because Kion had taught them unity. The wind carried drums of hooves and wings. Rafiki raised his staff. The moment had come. Kion stepped forward, heart pounding like thunder. Every eye watched him. Every hope rested on him. He wanted to be perfect, but he remembered something deeper. A king is not perfect, a king is responsible. He thought of the circle of life, of balance, of mercy stronger than revenge. When Rafiki placed the mark of the king upon him, Kion did not roar in pride. He bowed his head in humility. He promised silently to protect the weak, guide the lost, forgive the broken, and stand against darkness no matter how strong it became. Then the roar came. Not loud, not wild, but steady and true. It echoed across the savannah, through valleys and rivers, into caves and forests, carrying one message: hope lives here. Animals lifted their voices. The Pride Lands were not celebrating a crown, they were celebrating a promise. Later, when the crowds faded and the sun began to rest, Kion sat with his friends under the warm sky. They laughed, remembering old adventures, teasing him about finally being king. Bunga said, "You better not forget us when you're famous." Fuli smirked, Besht chuckled, Ono rolled his eyes. Kion smiled with tears in his eyes and said, "A king without his guard is just a lonely lion." Night returned, gentle and peaceful. Kion walked the borders of the kingdom alone, listening to the wind, the grass, the quiet heartbeat of life around him. He felt fear again, but this time it did not control him. It reminded him to stay humble, to stay alert, to stay kind. A frightened cub approached him in the dark and asked, "Are you scared, King Kian?" He knelt beside the cub and answered, "Every day." "But courage is choosing to protect you anyway." The cub smiled, and Kian knew he was ready. Freeing from fear to crown, his journey was complete, not because the battles ended, but because he learned what power truly means. Power is patience. Power is mercy. Power is standing up again and again for those who cannot stand for themselves. As the stars watched and the wind whispered through the Pride Lands, Kion lifted his head and roared one last time. A roar of peace, a roar of promise, a roar of a king who never gave up. And in that moment the world understood that true royalty is not born in blood, it is forged in courage, loyalty, and love that refuses to fade. And so the legend of Kion, the brave, began, not as the lion who defeated fear, but as the king who walked beside it and still chose light. Guiding his kingdom into a future where hope would always rise with the sun.